Welcome to Speaking Highly with Jon Huck. I am your host, Jon Huck. With me, as always, Indy Fawcett. If you like the show, if you've been enjoying it, if you think this is worthwhile podcasting, please like button, subscribe, rate, and review. It really does help, and it takes you 3 seconds, you know?
Just lightly tap it.
Yeah, lightly tap it. We're not asking you to smash it.
No more. No more with the smash.
Don't punch the like button. Don't hit it with any objects. It's just a light tap. It's a light
little tap, and then once you're done there, hop over to the audio platforms and rate and review.
Yeah.
You know, hit us 5 stars. It really helps the show elevate.
Yeah, and also I like seeing the comments. So if there was an episode you liked more than others, or if there's and I am open to constructive criticism. I'm not gonna. If someone's like, "Hey, you're fucking ugly," I'm not gonna respond. But if someone's like,
one of the best reviews on the audio platforms, on the Apple audio platforms, is "I'm only here for John Smoker laugh." It's the best. It's the best. It's the best comment there is. It's great.
Which is comical only because like I don't smoke. You know what I mean? Like if I chain smoked or was a smoking on the podcast, you know, it would be like they'd be like, well, that's why his laugh is like that. But my brother laughs the same way, just with this like.
It's like, all air, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. My parents never laughed like that. I don't know I don't know. But speaking of laughing,
great laugh, by the way. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I'm into any laughter at this point. I went out and did a show the other day. It was like 10 people there, not even, and got a couple laughs and was like, oh well. That felt good. It really does feel good to be back doing stand-up. And I'm not saying like again, I'm doing small shows with nobody in the audience. And I'm like, I say later, and we're talking to Henry, but I'm done caring about how many people are there. If you show up at a show that I'm on and you want to see comedy, you got to get some fucking comedy. All right. Some of it might be read from a piece of paper because it's brand new. Some of it might not be the funniest shit you've ever heard. But I think, and another comic said she'd showed up to watch the show, and I was like, oh, that's nice of you to support. And she's like, you know, it helps me to see that other people are also rusty. And I'm like, that's fair. That's fair because, you know, guys like, you know, and not that we all compare ourselves to someone like Bill Burr, but he is, you know, kind of a gold standard these days. And that dude, yeah, he slowed down during the pandemic, but he still found a way to put shows on, and people would bend over backwards to put a show on with him involved because he is a draw and he makes them money. And he's fucking hilarious. But, you know, guys like that who get to do more of it during the pandemic are less rusty, and then people who didn't do any of it are like breaking out. It's like, you know, Tin Man, like.
Yeah. Well, like you said, like I came up with the grand idea of trying to do open mics, and you gave me some advice over text that was just, you know, if you're not willing to do it for free for the rest of your life, don't do it.
Yeah, I attribute that. Yeah, I attribute that to. I think that's a Kyle Kinane quote, but it's because people.
Shout out Kyle. Yeah.
If he is like me or any other comic who performs in clubs or bars or wherever, people will. You seem very accessible. So people will then give you advice or tell you what you should do, or, you know, so that kind of stuff.
Well, it's helpful. It's helpful for me.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
From my perspective, like I come from like a lover of comedy, instead of like joke writing is a mystery to me. It's just I understand. Get somebody acquainted with the premise. And make them laugh. Like it's very simple, and just be funny. Like that's what's so funny. It's just
simple.
Like,
it's so simple on paper. But what I meant was when people ask you after shows like, hey, you know, I want to do comedy, or I'm thinking about getting into comedy, and you know, you don't want to be discouraging, but you also want people to understand that. Like reality. When I'm featuring for Dan Cummins and it's a sold out weekend in Nashville or whatever, yes, that is a high point. But when I separate from Dan and go out on my own and I'm not in Nashville, or I'm in a place with less people, or the club is smaller, or it's not a club necessarily, but like you have to love it. You have to love it, and you have to be willing to do it for little to no money, because paying your bills with it is very difficult. paying your car insurance is difficult. I'm not trying to be discouraging.
And Henry's great segue. Henry
Yes.
really proves that with this.
Our
picture.
guest today is Henry Phillips, who is one of my favorite comedians of all time. And
I can see why.
dude, I mean, what I'm talking about, this willing to do it for free, like he made a movie called Punching the Clown in 2008 or 9, and it is about that experience, being a road comic, being, brushing your teeth in a lake and washing your pits in a sink and crashing on couches and club owners screwing you over and bookers being shady. And, it's essentially like being in a band, but there's no other bandmates to have your back. You're by yourself, But he made this movie, and Punching the Clown, like I said, it's on Amazon now. You can get it. It used to be on Netflix, but it's on Amazon. And it is hilarious. It's very funny. It's very well written. And it is essentially a collection of stories that happened in Henry's life once he started doing stand-up. He's a super interesting guy. We're going to have him on multiple times because we barely scratched the surface. We talked about one movie. He's put out a sequel to Punching the Clown. He's put out, he has 2 web series. One is called Henry's Kitchen, where he is a cook.
Great show.
Prepares meals. Yeah. And gives you step-by-step instructions. And then one is a show called Highwayman, where he patterned it after Highway to Heaven, where Michael Landon just sort of walked around and then would show up and be like, hey, looks like you're having some trouble. And then he would help people because he was an angel or whatever it was, trying to get to heaven. But Henry plays a guy named Jake Evans who just wanders around and bumps into people and helps them by being the most unhelpful pain in the ass that's ever existed. I've done a couple of them. I've worked with Henry a couple times, and first of all, he's a joy to work with on a set. He's just super talented, super funny. But also, he's the first comic. I was at a party, and he said something about being on the road. And he goes, you know what I'm talking about, right? And I said, well, I don't get on the road as much as I'd like. And he goes, well, that's crazy. You're hilarious. And I'm like, well, that's very kind of you. And he goes, then I said something like, and if you ever need a feature, you let me know. And he was like, huh. And then literally, while I was sitting there, he called his manager and said, hey, when I do Peoria next month, can I bring a feature? And they were like, yeah, you can. It says you can. And he asked me right there. He's like, hey, do you want to go to Illinois? And I was like, what? Yeah. And from that, I did a weekend with Henry at the Jukebox in Peoria, Illinois. And from that, Dan Conlon, the owner of the Jukebox, who loves Henry, and all the local comics love Henry because Henry is a personable guy who's fun to be around. They were all like, oh, come back. I headlined featured for Henry on the coldest day of the year. It was a February, coldest day of the year. And I was back in August on the hottest weekend of the year to headline, which is rare. Usually I'll feature somewhere and then not for another year will I be able to come back. But this was like, come back in 6 months or whatever. And it was like,
the universe was like, this is Jon Huck's moment here. Boom.
Well,
yeah.
And again, I look at that, like, is it lining up in the sense that Henry took me to a club that already loved Henry. So if Henry loves me, they love me by proxy. And it did work out. I mean, Dan is a phenomenal guy. I've had been back to that club several times. Yeah, I mean, it's just working with Henry is a joy, and he's a solid dude. He's from Southern California, but he has a very Midwest loyalty to him. So, without further ado, guys, Henry Phillips and Punching the Clown. Enjoy it. All right, here I am with Henry Phillips, everybody. Henry, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, John, good to be here, man.
I guess we'll start at the beginning because I'm hoping that if there are people, because I bring your name up a lot. Like whenever I talk about comedy with anybody who's asking me, like, who should I listen to? Because there are people that don't take it upon themselves to find things that they think are funny. You know what I mean? They need someone to tell them. And that's not like a bad, I'm just saying like people aren't going to do their own research. So if anybody asks me like, hey, I kind of like comedy, who should I be listening to or what should I be doing? And I always bring your name up. It's like one of the first names that comes up because I feel, there are a couple people that I've met out here in Los Angeles that I'm bewildered at their lack of fame, I guess, or celebrity status, because I just feel like, and you're one of those people. You're very talented. You are, and I think one of the key things for you, you're a very good storyteller. You're a very good storyteller. Like you're like my dad in the sense that you could tell a story, the same story over and over again. And even if I'd heard it, I'd be like, huh, 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 huh. And I would sit, like being on the road with you, I would watch your set, which I don't do for every comic, but I would watch it every time just to hear the stories again. And they're the same stories, but there's just a way that you tell a story that is lost on some people. There are people that are not good storytellers. It's a skill. But anyway, so let's start. Why comedy?
Let's see. I guess when I was growing up, I did take myself pretty seriously, like extremely seriously. Like for me, the most traumatic thing that could ever happen was if for some reason I was humiliated in public. Obviously, like farting in a class in like fourth grade or something would be like, I think that happened to other kids every now and then. And I would just like have nightmares about what that must be like to have everybody looking at you and just like, oh my God, that must just be like, I would just jump off a cliff. Like it was just traumatizing to me. And maybe when I got older, I think after a while, like you just get kind of overwhelmed with the kind of crippling effect that kind of fear has on you. And then suddenly when you start laughing at yourself, it feels good. You're just like, especially if you're laughing at your own failures. I met a couple of friends in high school that like we didn't go to our prom. Like there were like 3 or 4 of us. And I remember we all went to, I grew up here in Glendale and we all went to Damon's Steakhouse down here.
Oh yeah.
Which is still there. It's like 35 years ago. And we just all laughed at what losers we were that we didn't go to the prom, and for some reason it felt good. Like,
was that like the point where you were like, hey, this is, I mean, everyone who you were with was also making fun of themselves. It was kind of a group mocking.
That was the beginning of it. Yeah, that was the beginning of like, there is life where you were unsuccessful at something that was like climbing Mount Everest and you didn't make it, but you do get the reward of being able to laugh about it with people. And that just sort of happened. And all of a sudden, it just sort of, it's framed everything in my life. I was a singer songwriter and I was trying to write these serious songs, that were like, wear my heart out on my sleeve type things, like in the early 90s with a lot of this coffee house type stuff. And and it didn't go anywhere. And then somehow that sense of humor started creeping into that. I started just singing about how just horrifically bad I was with meeting girls and all that kind of stuff. And as like when you start getting laughs from people, like that's a very thrilling feeling. Like that's an amazing feeling. And so, yeah, I don't have to tell you how I got addicted to it from that point on,
Right. Yeah. I mean, once that turn was made and you chose to not take yourself so seriously and not be, because I can, like, you have a great voice and you're really good at the guitar. So I can picture like the kind of early 90s songs you might be writing that like you could play by yourself, that would be emotional, that would get people, oh man, Henry's a deep soul,
Yeah.
But so you didn't like a lot of people will get a laugh from their parents and be like, ooh, oh, that was good. That was some attention I liked. And then it can grow from there. Were you not like, I mean, were your parents worried about you? Were they like, oh, Henry's so serious? He's like,
well, my dad always had a really good sense of humor, and he was always very encouraging of anything stupid, like like he was always, I mean, really, like, he was really, it was pretty funny because he would take people by surprise, when he would.
Because he looked pretty serious.
Yeah, he looked like he'd be like an upstanding member of society or something.
Right, yeah, a Shriner.
A senator or a priest or something like that. But he would just say something that like my friend, if he was giving our friends a ride home from school, he would just say something, and I don't really remember any specific examples, but my friends would be like, "So was your dad joking when he said that? Like, what was he talking about?" And but yeah, that was always pretty much encouraged in our family.
Yeah, and your dad, it should be mentioned. Your dad was an actor, is an actor. Yeah. And your mom was in commercials, and so your family was like,
they were performers.
Yeah, they're performers, but in a sense that like your dad wasn't George Clooney or Clark Gable, or it wasn't like he was a working actor. I think he was a working actor, which is rare in by itself. But then, and I just want to touch on this quickly because I bring this up a lot whenever I talk about you, which sounds like I'm a crazy person who just sits around talking about you, and that's not the case. But you'd mentioned, because we had you on the Hollywood Anonymous podcast, and we probably had you on the full count. I mean, I've had you on every one of my podcasts, but you talked about how your dad was slotted, kind of picked to play the role of Coach in the Cheers pilot. And
well, he wasn't picked. He was there was a pilot. He had done Taxi and really killed it.
Yeah, he had a guest starring role on Taxi.
Yeah, and then they came up with a new show, Cheers, and my dad was one of the guys that they were looking at. He didn't have the part, like it wasn't offered to him, but he at the same time got offered to play the bad guy in the movie Porky's 2, and which it's
coming off the heels of Porky's, for anyone
probably more money than he had gotten for the last 3 years of his acting job, and then to stick around town for a show that you didn't have it locked up, and that you didn't know if it was going to go beyond the pilot thing. So yeah, there was no. But yeah, we've all often mused about like what would life have been if my dad had been one of the original cast members of Cheers, which very possibly could have happened.
It could have, and
my life probably would have been very different,
but also so many other lives would have been very different. Like, if the guy who got picked to play Coach, if like your dad is still alive, so if the guy who played Coach passed away, and that opened the door for Woody Harrelson.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying Woody Harrelson wouldn't have had a successful career on his own, whatever. But I think about that, like if your dad had been Coach and he had gone a whole series, you know what I mean? And it lasted the whole time, and then the show ends. There's no Woody. There's no place for him to come in. So it's like, does his career launch? Because Woody Harrelson was phenomenal on Cheers. He was real good.
And it was a huge, huge show at the time. So
when he came on, it was already massive. Yeah.
It really does make you scratch your head. It's like, does Cream rise to the top? I mean, he was a talented guy anyway, and he also was in the local scene. He had the buzz, like before he was on Cheers. The reason he filled that slot so quickly is because he was the go-to guy. Like everybody, this guy's about to break. He was doing plays around town. He was hanging out in all the right scenes and all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure what kind of acting he had been doing, but he was hot,
Yeah.
So would he have eventually ended up in something? I don't know.
Yeah,
but
it's one of those things.
Definitely was it. Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to say.
Yeah, I just find it very interesting, and it's just something that I find myself thinking about on a.
Well, the other thing is, it's like the butterfly effect thing. It's like if a butterfly flaps its wings and 10,000 miles away, there's a tornado. It's like but would that actor? I can't remember his name, Nick something, who played the Coach, which was the part that my dad was up for. Would he have survived because maybe he was overworked?
And would your dad still be alive today? Because maybe getting a show like Cheers.
My dad did from about 80 to 90. He did pretty much all the TV shows, guest starring roles. And
1980 to 1990, not age 80 to 90. Yeah. Okay.
Not 80 to 90 years old. 80 to 90 years old. He didn't do a lot of anything. But anyway, he talked about how doing one of those network sitcoms in front of a live audience was
stressful.
Really stressful work. I'm sure nobody wants to say it was hard work when there's people out there working on oil rigs and stuff like that, you know, losing
laying bricks, losing fingers.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, you had to do a sitcom? That was a lot of work, was it?
Yeah.
Ooh.
But you have to get up in front of middle America, you know, in person, and knowing that you're being broadcast on TV, and knowing that like back then on the network,
that was all there was. Everyone watched it.
It wasn't like now doing a TV show. It's like, okay, 5,000 people are going to see me on this, whatever, you know, but it's like, this was it. The next day, everybody would see you in the street and go, oh, that's the guy who was on this thing. Yeah. But, but they would also throw lines at you at the last minute, you know, like, oh, by the way, they changed this whole section and you've got to go out there. And if you're like, my dad took what he did really seriously, in that he wanted to make sure that he didn't go out there and he didn't want to be the reason that everybody has, okay, cut, we're going to take it again. Bill, do you want some coffee or some water? Anything?
Yeah, you feeling okay?
Yeah. It's
God.
like, so he would take a lot of that stress on. And sorry, I have a cat here, and
I hope so.
He gets pissed off. I'm trying to put him on a cleanse thing where he's not eating, and he gets really upset. But let me just I'm just gonna lock him in a room really quick.
Well, you don't lock him in a room.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, this is perfect. This is exactly what I would expect in an interview with Henry.
Okay, yeah. For the animal lovers out there, I'm just joking. He's not on an actual cleanse. Actually, I feed him like 8 times a day, and he's spoiled. But anyway, so we were talking.
But yeah, but it's interesting. You come from a showbiz family, but you weren't like at a young age. You were like, I'm going to be a comedian. You found that rock and roll and music kind of was your thing at the time, and then I don't mean to say rock and roll, but I assume you liked all those bands. If you're playing the guitar, you know, early '80s, mid '80s to '90s, you are probably getting into rock and roll.
Yeah.
But
yeah, for sure.
So the comedy, the music kind of starts to turn a little bit, to get funny, to get silly, or whatever you want to call it. What was the first song? Like, because you said it kind of crept in, so you were trying to write like a serious song, and then maybe like, hey, that's kind of like you rhyme something with something else, and you're like, oh, that's actually funny, not serious.
Oh yeah.
And then it just grew from there. Did people immediately go, hey, that's the thing, do that? Or
yeah, let's see. The very first one was when, well, hell, I've got my guitar back here. You want to hear?
Sure. You'll be the first guest to play music on the show.
Let's see. There was one song that I used to do that they would all start as songs that were for real, you know.
Right.
And then because those sounded the funniest because they sounded like they were meant to be real songs. Well, let's see. Oh yeah, this was one here. I'm trying to remember what. Everyone who knows me knows I know you, and everyone who knows you knows me too. And everyone who knows I know you knows I wouldn't lay a hand on you. And everyone who sees me seeing you, and everyone who sees you sees that too. It was something like that where it's just like, all right, this is ridiculous.
But it does. It starts out like, ooh, this is meaningful. And then you're like, wait, what? Yeah. It's just running me in a circle. What the hell's going on?
Yeah. But then the one that really started me doing comedy was when my buddy was going through a breakup, and I was over there trying to cheer him up. And he had a newspaper out. It was like the Wall Street Journal or something like that. And I was just kind of riffing. I was like, man, we got to write a song about your breakup. And I was like, I know it's getting late at night, and I know you haven't showered in a week, and I know that you don't feel like doing anything, and I know that right now unemployment rates are high. I know that we're generating higher trade deficits, And I know that, and I'd look at the newspaper, General Motors just shed 14% of its automotive components operations to accelerate the overhaul of unprofitable North American expenditures, resulting in a loss of nearly 14,000 American jobs. What do you want me to do about it? So it was like that. And then, I just started saying like these really long phrases and then saying, what do you want me to do about it after? And then my buddy, who was actually a drummer, and at the time he was going around all these little theaters in LA to get like $50 a night to play in bands that were accompanying like Groundlings and these kind of comedy theaters. And he said, man, you got to come out to some of these places that I go and just do that song and just pretend to be doing it as a serious song, like at an open mic night or something like that. And then I think it would blow people away. And so I was like, all right. And so I started doing it. I went to like the Highland Grounds and what were some of the other ones? The Cinegrill up there at the Roosevelt Hotel, Molly Malone's.
I remember Molly Malone's and this. Yeah.
And there was a place called the Upfront Comedy Club out in Santa Monica that was a big stop for a lot of what do you call it? Second City alumni.
Okay.
And that was when I met like all the comedians in the world. That was in like 94. Maybe not all the stand-ups, but all the improv, mostly from Chicago guys. And,
yeah.
And that was really that sort of like was a foundation for the network that I kind of had from that point on.
Did you click with those people? That kind of like
that
mentality?
In a weird way, almost a little better, because I wasn't in anybody's face trying to take up their stage time or trying to do something similar to what they were doing. They would do music every now and then, but generally I was a guy who went on there as a break from all the improv stuff and the sketch stuff. And I would be like the musical guest, a little bit like when SNL has their musical guest, except where I was doing comedy.
Right.
But there was never, like, I'll bet you anything on SNL, the musical guest probably gets along the best with everybody than everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody else is probably stressed and yelling at each other and everything. But I would just sort of go on, do my thing, and then walk off and then go have a smoke with everybody or a drink afterward. And everybody'd be kind of like, oh, yeah, this guy's cool. Like I wouldn't get in anybody's way.
They didn't see you as any kind of threat.
Pretty much.
If anything, you kind of uplifted what they did.
Yeah.
And you kept the audience engaged and like comedic.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean?
Kinds
Like
of
laughing.
Conflicts, interpersonal fights backstage with everybody. But yeah, I wasn't really a part of that. I would just go on and do my thing. But
man,
but those were really, really good times,
I bet, man. And what was the first time you were like, I'm going to perform as myself and not be in this, I'm not going to do an improv show. I'm going to do a set as.
Well, yeah, that was, it was sort of the inevitable thing to do. Like in stand-up, it's a little different. Like you work your way up. You get a 5-minute guest spot and then 15 minutes to MC and then 30 minutes. And then after years, you're headlining. But if you wanted to do your own show in LA as a musician, you had to start with a 45 or 50-minute slot. There really wasn't any other way to do it. So I had to get 50 minutes worth of songs. So I had 50 minutes within the first year of doing my performing. Yeah, except for it was pretty bad. It hadn't been chiseled the way that it gets when you've been performing for years and years.
Well, because you were writing them and taking them to the stage. There was no time to fix anything. There was no time to get into it deeper. You were just trying to amass a collection of songs that could fill that time so you could do a show.
Yeah, and they were for the most part good templates for songs, but they hadn't really been edited by. I'm a firm believer that everything gets edited by audiences. Like that's screenings of films, and then you go, "Ooh, that one didn't work. Let's get rid of that one." And so these songs hadn't gotten through that process yet. So the act itself was kind of hit and miss by the time I started going out on the road and stuff, because I was performing for a pretty generous crowd that was into music, and they were mostly my friends and stuff like that.
Right.
But so then I would get friends bringing me out on the road to
Who
open for them.
yeah, who did
Well,
you
Drew Hastings was one of them, and also Doug Stanhope.
So Stanhope was one of the first people to take you out on the road, because the first time I heard you was on Something to Take the Edge Off, the Stanhope album, and you're playing guitar through the whole thing.
Yeah, that
and it
was
awesome.
The first week that I worked with him down in Houston. Yeah,
really?
In '99. Well, we had done that bit before, where I was playing guitar to sort of accompany his stand up, and it was called Something to Take the Edge Off because it really was an edgy CD. I mean, he was doing some really dark stuff.
I mean, he's kind of
like the light music and filling up all the gaps, which just sort of make it a little bit more palatable, you know? And so, so we would do that around town a lot. And then in '99, he asked if I could go to Houston and I would open for him. And I was like, wow, I'd go to a comedy club and get paid to do this. You know, I mean, this was amazing. Like, even though it wasn't a lot of money.
No, but that's not the point.
It might have been like $500 and the flight, and Doug was probably paying for the flight.
I was going to say, the club didn't pay for that.
Yeah, in '99, $500 doing comedy. I mean, it would have taken me about 2 months to make that doing what I was doing, you know. I mean, I had day jobs and stuff at that time, and but it was pretty great. And so I went over there and I was in front of, it was like 300 actual paying comedy club goers, and they were laughing at my act throughout the whole thing. And I was starting to do that chiseling down process. I was like, ooh, that song did not work. That one's gone. This one, I'll do about half of it and then I'll get out, you know, I'm going to add some funnier jokes to this one, you know? And so that already started happening. And so it was a great week. And then we weren't really doing the thing where I was playing guitar
with him,
Doug's act, and he was trying to record the whole week. And then the last night, Sunday, he said, hey, do you want to do the thing where you play the guitar? And I was like, sure. And it was about half the audience that normally was there every other show. And but it was great. And after,
but that's the hour he made of the album. Yeah,
it's Sunday night in front of, I don't know, maybe 120 people in a 300 seat place. And there's not one edit in the whole thing. It's literally just beginning to end exactly how the show was.
Dude.
I mean, Doug was incredibly ahead of his time for that, you know, because he was doing everything sort of the way that eventually became the cool way to do it. You know, it's like, I'm not going to edit stuff. I'm not going to try to get it, you know, super hot audience and all that stuff. He's like, you know, what you're hearing is what it's like to be out at a comedy club. And it's pretty great instincts, you know.
Well, first of all, Doug is, I mean, he's one of my favorite comedians. Do you know what I mean? There's like a small group of people, and he's like at the top of that list. When I love watching him. I think he's a fantastic writer, and I think he works really hard at it, despite the act he puts up that he does not work hard at it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that is true. I've coming out of the pandemic, doing shows. I did a show a couple nights ago that was at a bar. It was at a bar that, and I'm not trying to be insulting to the guy who booked me or anything, but like, it was a room. If I would have, like 2 years ago, I would have walked in, looked around and gone, and then walked out. Like, I'm like, there's no people here. This is awful. This is a terrible setup. Like, I don't want anything to do with this. I'm done with that attitude. My new attitude is, I don't give a shit how many people are here. If one half of a person came out here to see comedy, they're going to get some fucking comedy. Like, I'm done caring about being a draw or trying to put asses in seats, and this, again, I'm not trying to get club owners to be like, well, goodbye, you know, but I just, it doesn't, I used to like really take that shit to heart, like, oh, I'm doing this show and nobody's here, you know, and be like, I guess I'm not good, like, just a shitty attitude. And that, one, it shows when you're doing stand-up, people are like, okay, this guy's not pumped for the room, you know, but two, it's like, that's not, I didn't get into comedy for sold out nights. You know what I mean? I got into comedy because I like making people laugh. And that, like you said, when you first get a laugh, when you get people to laugh at you, it's a really good, it's a high, you know, it feels good. You want to keep doing it. So if it's 2 people that are laughing, if it's 1,000 people that are laughing, I'm going to be okay, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
When did you start? Because obviously that led to, like, I heard that album in early 2000 and I was like, who the fuck is Henry Phillips? Like, I thought you were a musician. I thought you were in the opening band. I didn't know. And then I kind of looked into it and I'm like, oh my God. And then I must have heard you on Bob and Tom or something. Like, I heard you on the radio and I was like, this is the guy from Stanhope's album. And then it was like literally from that. And then I, you know, just being in LA, I ran into you eventually, you know what I mean? And we started talking. But
yeah.
At what point were you, because from that, I mean, you recorded your own albums, you started going on the road more, and you became a comedian. You were a full-blown comic, you know what I mean? Yes, you played the guitar, but you were not doing anything that was serious songwriting. I mean, yeah, it was serious songwriting in the sense that most people can't write songs.
At places called the Looney Bin, you know. Yeah. So yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, there was
exactly
music at that point.
What was there any? Was there any time when you were like, well, I think now I'm going to try acting, or let's take this up a notch, or was that just sort of offered to you?
Well, it goes back to that storytelling thing that you were talking about, because when I was in college, before any of this, my friend Greg Viens was doing, he was going to go to film school. Like, we were political science majors, and then I wound up becoming a comedian, and then he wound up becoming a film school major, and then eventually a filmmaker, you know, because he had to do like a final project. And I used to tell him all these stories about things that would happen when I was out, mostly around LA. I'd be like, you know, yeah, this club owner asshole told me he was going to give me $4 for every person, and we had like 48 people there, and he gave me $14, and I was like, that's not even divisible by 4. Like, that doesn't make sense. How, like, you know, I was like, if you gave me $12, I'd be like, all right, well, obviously you're screwing me, but at least it would make some kind of
at least the math is there.
So yeah, stuff like that. Like, we had a lot of these where I had this manager who was always trying to come up with a label for me, and she said he's a little bit like she pitched it to me. She was like, you're sort of like James Taylor on Smack, and I was like, I'm pretty sure James Taylor actually was on.
He had a heroin problem.
Yeah, that's not saying anything. It's just to say James Taylor. So there were all these things, and he was like, man, we got to make a movie about this, you know? And so we made a prototype movie called Punching the Clown. Before we eventually made an indie movie in 2008.
Okay, so this was the first.
The 90s. Yeah, so there's like an hour long. Yeah, it's 35 millimeter.
Whoa!
Yeah, there's at least one scene on YouTube somewhere that I put up there.
Oh, dude, and you have that?
Yeah.
You don't have it on 35 millimeter, do you?
No, yeah. And by the way, it's not 35 millimeter. It was, I think it was
45
millimeter.
16.
But it was old school film, you know, and but yeah, it's a 60-minute film, and most of it is unwatchable, but there's probably about 15 minutes in there that's pretty good stuff. But one thing that's really cool is there's a lot of great footage of LA, you know.
Oh, back in the 90s.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. We shot at the Four Seasons because Greg knew somebody who owned the Four Seasons, and no movie was ever allowed to shoot at the Four Seasons. They just didn't need the money. They just didn't want people filming there, but they let Greg do it. And we shot a whole dinner scene there. And then we looked at it when we were editing, and when we're just watching a cut, and it wasn't until like way too late that I was like, you know, there's really nothing in here that we both kind of noticed that there's nothing in there that showed that it was the Four Seasons. It was basically just a blank wall behind us.
It was a tight dining shot.
Anywhere. Yeah, but that was like a big lesson in filmmaking. It's like
establishing shots.
Yeah, exactly.
Show where you are before you get into it.
Really could have done that one at home. Yeah.
Yeah, you could have just done a stock photo of the Four Seasons and then.
Yeah. Here, let me check on the cat. I'm gonna give
Yeah.
him some actual food right now.
Okay. What is that pillow?
No, he's okay. This is gonna be an ongoing thing. He was too quiet, so it was making me like, because he's an old guy too. So I'm like, wait, is he all right? Like, so I'm not happy if he's quiet. I'm not happy if he's meowing too much. Like, I don't like either scenario. So, but I went in there and he was totally chilling out. So,
Oh, all right. Well, that's good. He's not dead.
like he was annoyed that I disturbed him. So, so he'll be good. I just felt bad for taking him out of his his domain. He's really the guy who rules this this little apartment of ours.
As cats do, man. They take over.
Anyway. So
Yeah.
so yeah, we made that movie, but they were all stories. That's all it was, and those stories never stopped. They never stopped coming, and we tried various iterations of it. We made a traditional development deal with Granada Films out of England and tried to raise money for it. Did pitch meetings to like foreign distributors and everything for pre-sales, and went to England, and then just more stories just started racking up. Nothing happened there, and then finally in like 2006, Greg showed up to my place one time after we had just given up completely, and he became a film professor at UCLA, and he just I remember he came to the door and he goes, you know, fuck it, we're just gonna make this. We're gonna make it. I'll borrow money from family. I'll take out credit cards. I'm just going to use every bit of money that I have. I mean, he basically took his life savings, you know, and put it into just, he's like, I have students that are making their own movies with digital cameras. And I didn't ever dream of just being a teacher. I wanted to be a filmmaker, you know? So I don't care. Let's write the script and let's make the script, you know? And then my cousins kicked in some money also to donate, you know, to the whole thing. It was sort of like Kickstarter before Kickstarter.
Well, and also first of all, I didn't realize Greg's film project was the sort of, you know, beginning stages of Punching the Clown. I think that's fantastic. And yeah, when he was teaching his students, like you said, you shot that first thing on film. Yeah. Film is $1 billion. It's super expensive. It's tedious to work with. It's hard. You could overexpose it. There's so many things that can go wrong from the time it's put onto the film to the time it's, you know, put onto anything you can watch it on. So he sees his students making films with, you know, smaller cameras, digital. You know, we have to load up cards and drives and not film canisters, and you know, and there's multiple takes and it doesn't matter, and you're not wasting money by doing it that way. So he probably just as kind of the way things technologically progressed was like, I'm teaching these kids to just go out and do it. I'm just going to go out and do it because which also speaks to how much he really did believe in it from the beginning, which I think
absolutely.
is awesome.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. He put his money where his mouth was. He was just like,
yeah.
And he probably has family members that'll never talk to him again. But hey, is there a way I can share a clip on here right now? Because I have it right on my computer.
I think if you play it on your computer, we'll be able to record it. Yeah.
Okay. So do you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's Greg on the left, and that's me with the ponytail.
What the hell? Okay, you're going to change his water once a day. That's not the problem. You're going to clean out the bottom of the cage twice a day. No, it's not going to be an issue. This guy's a Siamese rabbit. You see, he's got the same sort of markings as a Siamese cat. No problem. So, how much is it now? $39.95. Just one rabbit. Yes. You're kidding to me. No. $10 for the rabbit. $10, I give you a parakeet. Oh, that is disgusting. It's for a kid, by the way? A kid. It's for a woman. Okay. Bon appetit.
Oh, it smells good. What is it?
This is called lapin à la moutarde.
Oh, it sounds French. So sexy. God, did I just say that?
Actually, it is French, but please help me make it.
Well, I'm very open-minded. As long as it's not like cat or rabbit or snails or pig's feet or oyster or veal or lamb.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because it really is rabbit.
Oh, Harry, you're such a comedian. You know, we do have the same sense of humor.
I'm not joking, I'm serious, it's rabbit.
Oh, Harry, you're so bad.
Henry.
Okay. So that's kind of based on a little bit of a true story. So yeah, that's the true story there being that I had this. There was a guy that I was giving guitar lessons to. Wait, is there a way to set it back the way that we had it, or?
Yeah, can you?
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. So so that was pretty much it. So that was an example of. So I had this friend of mine who was I was giving English lessons to, who was a French speaking person. That's not Greg, but Greg was playing that in the thing, and he suggested. Because I had a date, and he suggested, why don't we get rabbit, and I can make you a wonderful rabbit dish, and you can impress her with that. And I was like, I don't think you can get rabbit just like at the supermarkets and stuff. Oh, no, you go to the pet shop. They've got them all over the place. I'm like, you're going to go to a pet shop to get a rabbit, And so we were trying to just sort of play out that scene. But yeah, no, we had a
Well, that's fantastic. So he comes to you. You had forgotten. You had given up. You weren't like, man, we still got something here. You were like, I'm done. And then he comes and says, why don't we just make it ourselves? Because, I mean, I know the idea at first is we get money, then we make it. We all get paid. Everybody's happy. He wanted to make it. So you guys made Punching the Clown. I mean, that's I think the best way to describe it would be a low-budget, independent movie, privately financed or whatever, however you want to say it. But
yeah.
But it's funny. Like it's obviously it's better quality than what you just showed. Meaning the audio is better.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All that stuff picked up because I'm assuming as Greg made films and made shorts and made other things, you learn your lessons, you learn from mistakes, and you move forward. What was like? Were you at all surprised at how good Punching the Clown was?
Yeah. We just knew we were onto something.
You did? Okay.
We were making the first one, the one in 2008.
Yeah.
Because we had been dreaming of filming ththese stories for at least 15 years at that point, like ever since they started accruing back in like 97 or something like that. And it just, everything about it felt funny. It's like we had Eddie Pepitone playing the manager, and then we had a girl named Beth Kennedy, who was playing the girl who booked me for a show and then wound up getting fired for booking me. And like, these were all real stories. And just to watch them being played out with really good actors, I was just like, this is incredible. So, and then one thing that I've been told, which seems to hold true, is that your movie is never as good as the dailies, but never as bad as the first cut.
Oh.
So on the day of course, we thought we were making pure magic, and it's like, wow, this is so much easier than I thought. And then, but then after we had a first cut that was 2 hours long, and we showed it in front of like 100 friends. We got a theater, the Toluca Lake, the Falcon Theater over there, and we screened it, and it was a very forgiving audience. A lot of the cast was in there, and a lot of friends and family. And even with all of those things in our favor, it wasn't a hit. It was not a huge hit, and it was like depressing. It was just like, oh my God. One good friend of mine even walked out halfway through and didn't even give a good reason. But I was like, wow.
Wait, what? You have a friend who came to a screening of your movie and just got up and left?
Yeah, and maybe there was a good reason, I don't know, but I was like, wow, this is terrible. But so what happened was that we had there at that screening was one of Greg's good friends, who's a pro editor. She's done a bunch of stuff for HBO, and she edited the movie Ghost World.
Oh.
And she is a genius. And after Greg had done amazing editing himself, we went through a whole other pass with this person as a third party. She was between projects. She was at home watching her daughter over the summer or whatever, because school was out. And she just happened to have like 10 full 8-hour days to donate to just all of us just sitting there and analyzing every frame. And to me, that always will be one of my most memorable learning experiences, because
That's where you made the movie.
yeah, because Greg and myself and Carol were all there, and we were all coming from totally different places. So there was like a tug of war happening in different places. Like every now and then somebody would fight for something, you know. I would be like, they'd be like, well, this bit with the business card isn't really working, because I always thought it was funny to, if somebody gives you a business card, to look at it and be like, that's awesome, and then
Cool, and hand it back.
So we did that in the
Oh man, that's really cool. There you go.
if everybody laughed at it as hard as you just did, but for whatever reason, it just, you know, because sometimes stuff doesn't really translate, but it wasn't really working on the screen. But I was like, no, it's staying in there. I don't care if only 5% of the people that watch it get it. That one's got to be there. And my justification, I was like, I've watched Spinal Tap 1,000,000 times, and there's jokes in there that go over most of the people's heads, but they're still in there, and that's why it's a movie that people will watch forever, you know.
And that's the thing, is like, if you put something like that in there, it's something that if someone doesn't catch the first time, it's like Spinal Tap. I've probably watched, I would say in my life, maybe 100 times. You know, like I've seen that movie over and over and over again. It's genius. It's so funny. It's so well done. But every time I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about this, or oh my God, I just saw that, and that's true. That's true of Punching the Clown too. That's a movie you watch once, like, man, that was really good. And you watch again, like, holy shit, it like gets better with every viewing.
Yeah, and I mean, well, I said yeah, like. But
like, yeah, it does, you moron.
I mean, I think it's really good, you know. I mean, I'm not taking all the credit for it. I'm just, I mean, obviously what we're watching is mostly Greg's cut and Greg's vision and all that other kind of stuff. Now, Carol also came in with some just classic editing knowledge, you know, like the van pulling up to show up to the little parking lot where the payphone is, where Derek Waters is going to make a phone call, you know. We would have it last in the original was like 6 seconds. And Carol would be like, okay, I think we get that the van is showing up there. You can cut it now. You know, it's like, there's not really a hard, fast rule for that.
She just had an eye.
Experience, you know, there's experience of knowing when you can cut things and pacing, like, you know, well, you know, from doing stand-up, you know, it's like, you've got your setup and then the punchline. You can't make that setup last too long, because people will start getting bored. But you also have to have enough information there that people are going to understand what the joke is once it comes around, you know. So it's really kind of tricky how fast. And then, of course, if it's a late night show and everybody's drunk, then you got to make it a little quicker and try. It's like, oh boy, I'm losing them. I better get to
yeah.
But there was a lot of that kind of process going on. But another one that was like my favorite was we had an entire subplot with a girl played by my really talented friend Susie Rose, who was sleeping with the journalist who winds up spreading this rumor about me or whatever. And it was like this whole scene where they woke up in the morning and he was trying to get information from her, and they were sleeping together. And it was a really good scene with great acting. And so while we're watching it, Carol, the editor, was looking at it, and she goes, so this is interesting. We've got, and she has a really thick French accent, but I can't even bother doing it, but just imagine it. But she's just like, this woman is beautiful. The camera loves her. She's like a movie star, and her acting is superb. And I really believe that she believes the things that she's saying in this scene. and it's a very high quality scene, and the camera looks great and it's nice, but who the fuck is she and why is
And
she
why are we watching this?
yeah.
Yeah.
I
You learn if it doesn't
I-
drive the story, if it doesn't drive the movie forward, you can get rid of it.
yeah, we thought, well, we should show everything, show what's happening behind the scenes in this situation, and try to make it an engaging thing. And she's like, the audience wants to go with you now on your journey, especially halfway through the movie. They're ready to follow the story. They don't want to go into some other place and start watching all different characters that they've never even. And it was really fascinating, but there were all these things. So what we ended up with at the end of those 2 weeks of frame fucking, if you will.
Yeah, I like that term.
So yeah, 10 days, 10 8-hour days of staring at it and going back and fighting over certain things and everything. We ended up with a 90-minute movie now.
Much better.
And in my opinion, I think it's just about perfect. I mean,
Tight.
I've watched it in screenings from New York to like, all over the world. I mean, we've done it. It's screened in Paris and in England and Canada and all these places. That's not all over the world, but all over the Western couple of countries, but and all over the States. But I got to say, I'm really, really happy with the audience reaction every single time it screens. And there's a lot that went right in that. And especially knowing how it is when it doesn't work, like I did on that first 2-hour version of it, like it, it really is just, I don't think I would change anything,
Yeah. But that's a good lesson to learn. It's like when you first start writing a screenplay, oh, cool, I got 200 pages. Like, okay, well, that's about 150 too many. And you need to fix that. Like, it's
totally.
It's just, but then you also, the more you watch movies or watch, kind of read scripts or watch TV, you sort of get the, there's a little bit of a formula to it. Like at a certain point, you have to be here in the story. At a certain point, you have to be here, and then you have to move forward here. And
for that, yeah. And Carol knows that stuff by the back of her hand. Like I'm completely. Rules are meant to be broken, but there's also a lot of rules that you want to keep because they work,
there's a reason they're there.
Yeah, ultimately. And we found out a lot of the rules by accident. We're just sort of like, it's not like we were trying to do it, but then at the end, when we're looking at it, you go, oh, wow, there really is a save the cat moment in the beginning. And then there's an arc, and then there's this, and we really kind of did all those things, but not really trying. Now, the other thing about it is that when we had the script, we went through a lot of people's critique of it, and
what people?
We meet with a potential producer, or with a couple of people that we were pitching to, maybe for financing or something like that, and they would just be like, a lot of these jokes are hack, a lot of them are. Dated, and a lot of stuff kind of didn't really work, and it's not really, it doesn't really know what kind of movie it wants to be. It's not really a must do, and nowadays you just have to have a must do if you're going to make a movie and everything. We 100% proudly, Greg and I, completely ignored that. What we said was, okay, well, he doesn't know, this person saying this doesn't know how it's going to be delivered. Like, a joke can look hacky if it's written on the page, because you're not doing it with the understatement, or you're not like, oh, guy slips on a banana peel. You'd be like, oh, I've seen that before. But it can be done in a way that's super fucking funny, It just depends on how you do it. And so Greg and I were never deterred by people, and there were very few people that read the script. We had readings where everybody was laughing, and that went better.
Yeah.
But when we gave the script to somebody for them to read, it was a waste of time because they just insulted it,
Well, here's the thing. Excuse me. Pardon me. There's a lot there. Like I wrote a movie with a certain voice in mind. Like I was writing it. The main character was like Will Ferrell, right? So everything that he does in the script is very Will Ferrell-y, and like you would think like, okay, if Will Ferrell, like there are Saturday Night Live scripts like for sketches that if you read on paper, you'd be like, do not put this on TV. This is terrible. And then Will Ferrell walks in a half shirt with bikini briefs on, and he loves America, and he's doing this whole thing, and it becomes the funniest fucking thing you've ever seen. There's like if someone wrote your jokes on paper and then read them, they'd be like, "Ooh, this guy's a comedian."
Yeah.
Ugh. But then if they see you do it, like you said, with the understatement, with the facial expressions, with the attitude towards the story, then that's what makes it. That's the thing.
Totally.
Like if reading stories made people famous, we'd all just read stories. I mean,
totally. Yeah, it's all take my wife, please. Yeah.
Right. But then it boggles my mind that people in the business can't understand that. Like, hey, this script doesn't read that funny. Let's meet the person who wrote it or meet the people that it's written for and have them read it to us. Like, if they haven't come to that conclusion yet, why are they even in the business?
Yeah. Well, I think that's why readings are a really important part of the process.
Yes. I agree with that. I don't think I thought about them as super important before I tried writing things on my own. And then I was like, dude, you need people to read this so that you can go, no, it's like this.
Yeah. And that's your first audience, is the people reading it, you can really get a feel for whether or not it's flowing during that part.
Yeah. So obviously, I'm sure you had big plans for the movie or big like dreams, and it just sort of stayed in its kind of independent. It over time it became I'd call it a cult classic, because if you say Punching the Clown and someone knows what you're talking about, they don't know it like, oh yeah, no, I know about that movie. They've seen it and they love it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's one of those things. There's no like Spinal Tap. People are like, if someone's like, oh yeah, I think I saw Spinal Tap, it was okay, then they didn't really watch it. You know what I mean? And they didn't care, and they weren't going to be fans of it anyway. But the people that have seen it that love it. You know, and I think that
pretty much what happened. And so okay, when 2009 Sundance came around, we didn't get accepted into Sundance. We got accepted into Slam Dance, which is sort of the indie kind of punk rock.
Well, Sundance didn't want comedies at the time, right? I mean, there was no way like your movie about being a comedian that was funny was like something they wanted to look at.
Yeah, and it was all celebrity and the whole thing.
Yeah.
No offense, Fairbanks, but it's like so many of my.
No offense, Fairbanks, Keen.
Yeah. Keen, Glazer.
Oh yeah, she's in the first one. Yeah.
Yeah, Eddie Pepitone. Yeah, there's a lot of people. I'm just saying that there wasn't at the time a celebrity.
Right.
That Sundance is going to be like, it wasn't like Sundance is like, even if it's like the brother of Steve Buscemi or something, they'll listen to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's just like I'm a complete outsider, unknown, whatever. And
but Slam Dance is big.
Slam Dance was huge, but what we were victims of is in the end of 2008, of course, the entire economy crashed, and so here we come in February to Slam Dance, and it was like there was half the people that normally were there, and all anybody was talking about is how nobody was getting any deals and all that stuff. And it was sort of a what's that word I'm looking for? Like a melancholy or like a
subdued?
No, I'm looking for that term that means like bittersweet. Yeah, it was like people were like, "Hey, congratulations, man! This movie's amazing." If it was a year ago, you would have made $1 million off of it, but that's just not happening anymore, and I'm not sure if it ever will. So we were like really disappointed, but we were enjoying the festival run anyway. We did, Vancouver, Baltimore, New York was fantastic. We did the Gen Art Festival in New York. There were celebrities in the audience, and then we got a run. To back up a little bit, the movie was by all means a success with audiences, and then nothing really happened. We never got a distribution deal or whatever. And But then Greg got a spam email that just said, don't let your film die, show it at the Quad Cinemas in New York and we'll pay for a publicist and we'll give you a whole package, but you basically pay. It's like pay to play. And we had run out of options completely. Everybody, it was sort of, everybody agreed that this was an amazing movie, but it was just done. But this was an opportunity that they guaranteed that the major newspapers would come out and do reviews of it and a bunch of other stuff. So Greg took out like another credit card for like $5,000 or whatever it was, and just said, "Yeah, let's do this." And I would have never done it, but Greg is a guy that just sort of like doesn't say no to stuff, and he's in a lot of debt. No, I'm just kidding. I always joke about how every time I do an interview about it, I'm like, I don't really care if Greg gets his money back or not. It's all about the art, and. But no, I mean, there is just such a determination that he has. It's just like not taking no for an answer. And this was one of those things that I would have thought was just completely a scam. And but that was our last effort, and it wound up being great. We did like a 2-week run at this little indie art theater at the Quad Cinemas in New York, and they came through. They brought, we had the New York Times and all these other people come down and see it. And they did reviews. And then it was like an official theatrical release for the movie all of a sudden. And man,
that's awesome.
Yeah, the comedians, Sarah Silverman did a tweet about it and it got like 10,000 retweets or something like that. And before you knew it, the entire comedy scene in New York was going to the theater to watch the movie because it was about comedy,
Yeah. And it's not about comedy like how JoJo Dancer or where they're already successful, or it's literally about a section of comedy that is not known by a layperson or someone not in, like, even people in the entertainment industry don't understand brushing your teeth in a lake, or washing your armpits in a bathroom sink, or same shirt over and over because you fucking forgot one, or
staying at your brother's place or whatever.
Crashing on couches and just kind of doing what you can to survive so that you can go on stage and tell people that might not even give a shit about you some jokes. So
the word of mouth from the comedians that showed up was just unbelievable. I mean, Joe List, I think, has shown it to like 150 of his friends or something like that. Like,
dude, I mean, I guess I should probably just start screening it for people, because I always recommend it and I tell them they should get it and they should watch it. And then, people are like, oh yeah, okay. And then you never know what they're going to do.
Yeah. I mean, Dan Natterman had a podcast at the time, and he let me come on. Like, I got a call that week when it was showing, and I was in New York, and I'm a huge Dan Natterman fan anyway. But it was just like he had just seen the movie and he loved it, and so we sat and chatted about it. And but like comics really came out of the woodwork and gave this great word of mouth campaign all over the place, and then eventually a distributor did pick it up, and then we got it on Netflix. This was back when they were still doing the DVDs on Netflix.
You could get them in the mail.
Yeah, and then it started streaming, and then we got on that one too, and that really blew up. And our movie was right there. People were running out of stuff to watch, and so they started asking their friends, "Well, what other stuff is there?" It's like, "Oh, this movie Punch in the Clown was pretty good." And so I remember like being I was in San Francisco, and I was going to the Punchline, and there was like this guy walking across the street. It was like a businessman with a briefcase and a suit and everything like that. Just not the kind of guy that I would normally be hanging out with. But he saw me, and he's like, "Hey, did I see you? You have a movie or something?" And I was like, "Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, it was good." And then he just, obviously not going to the show that I'm about to perform at.
Right. He just recognized you from the movie.
Recognized me on the street. Yeah. And it was just like, there were a lot of people that were watching it, and it was an incredible thing. So it sort of landed there. It was on there for about 2 or 3 years, and then it got taken off because Netflix got too big, and there was too much competition with distributors fighting over bandwidth, and we just got lost in the shuffle. The reviews were great. I have no idea why they wouldn't just leave it on there. It wasn't generating a lot of income for us, so they couldn't have been paying that much. But what I understand they do is they go to studios and bundle like 10 movies and get a whole deal that way or something like that.
Yeah. You didn't fit in the bundle. You weren't a major film.
Yeah.
Is it on?
Movie, made back about a quarter of what it cost, and
which I'll be honest, for an independent movie made with your own money, that's pretty good. I mean, it sounds crazy, but most people don't make back a dime.
No, it's true. Yeah, pretty much all the money came from Netflix. But then after that, now it's on Amazon. If anybody,
that's what I was going to ask. It's got to be somewhere.
Yeah, if you have an Amazon subscription, you can watch it for free. But Greg pretty much just uploaded it himself on there. And if you like it enough, then you can watch the sequel, which you're in.
Yes,
and that's a whole other story. That was a studio with celebrities and more money and everything like that. And that was a legit movie.
A film. That was a film. Like that was, and we won't be. I mean, I don't know what I was thinking I could get through 2 movies and all the other stuff, the content you put out within an hour's time. But we basically talked about Punching the Clown, which I think is it's the beginning for you. You know what I mean? And it's like. And as hard as, look, I know you were on the road from the 90s to 2000. You weren't like, hey, I'm just trying to think of something to do. And then I did Punching the Clown. Like you were hustling, you were putting in the work, but at the same time, when you're doing that, because of who you are, you're getting more stories. So like the stories, like when I was on the road with you, the stories, some of those stories you were telling on stage ended up in Punching Henry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think it's kind of like I don't know if refreshing is the right word, but knowing you and knowing full well that these are legitimate stories that happen to you, that they're almost not embellished at all. And that your reaction and your behavior within the stories is so who you are that when you see it in a movie, I'm sure there are people like, well, okay, I'm sure Henry rode an elevator with a pretty woman, but that's probably as far as that story goes. Yeah. No. He got off, and because I remember being in Peoria with you, going up in an elevator, go, this is the elevator that happened on.
Oh, that's right.
And I was like, what? I was like, because in my head, I was like, that's an embellished story. And you're like, no, this is the elevator. and I could see, and I go, oh my God, this is exactly how that would happen, walking back and forth.
I'm glad you reminded me. I'd completely forgotten. Yeah, it was the holiday, because, after a while, a bit becomes its own.
It's a bit. You don't even remember where it came from.
You're right. Yeah, it was the Holiday Inn in Peoria, and I was getting off the elevator, and I went the wrong way, and I thought, well, I'm just going to stand here and hide against the wall and wait for the doors to
press
close.
Yourself against the wall so that they can't see you.
And the door is just standing there for an uncomfortably long amount of time, and then I look across and there's a mirror, and they all see me, and I can see them, and I'm standing hiding against the wall, and then the doors slowly close, and I'm like, what? What in the fuck was that?
I would love to have been on that elevator. Like, did you see that fucking guy? What a weirdo!
That was just it's just one of those things where you're going so far out of your way to not draw attention to yourself.
Do the opposite.
Like a complete maniac. Yeah.
I fucking love that story. Well, we'll have to do we'll do more of these because I want people to hear about, because Punching Henry was insane. You had J.K. Simmons fresh off of winning an Oscar in that movie. Like he was the one who was like, hey, Punching the Clown was really funny. Yeah, I'll do this second one. Like, oh, okay. Like,
I know that was.
I mean, I was standing there like you're putting fake ponytails on Mike Judge, and then you're like, oh, J.K. Simmons is going to be here later. I'm like, what? Oh, so this is a movie then? Okay. It was fucking crazy. But also, you got some phenomenal web content that is truly like Henry's Kitchen. Again, how is there not a cooking show with you as this is something that I would watch, every fucking day. Henry's Kitchen is on YouTube, and then you have a Patreon, that has
Patreon/Henry's Kitchen and Patreon/Highwayman Show.
That's the newest. That's your newest concoction.
And yeah, man, the latest one that you and I did, a lot of people are saying it's their favorite of all of them. You brought it. You always bring professionalism every time. That bit that you did in Punching Henry was not an easy bit, because it's one of those things where it has to be played right on that line. It can't be too much because it's a joke. And so, yeah, you played it perfectly. And but yeah, I feel like I have so many of those types of ideas, but you always just show up and just do it exactly in the right place. So,
well, that was the day I shot Punching Henry was a stressful day for you, because they were like, you were having to do stunt work. You were like having to fall off a stage with your guitar and not hurt yourself so you could finish the movie. It was like, that was the most intense
comedy gag, and then never even talked about how it was going to actually get done. And then on the set, they showed some stuntman guy shows up and goes, "Hi, Henry. Yeah, I'll be teaching you your moves." And I'm like, "My moves? Like, what are you talking about?" And then he's like, "Yeah, you're going to pivot, and then you're going to push back and then fall on your back, but we got a mat there." And I'm like, "Hold on, what?" I'm going to jump off the stage, and we got one, and that was it, and it looks fantastic.
Yeah.
Greg was like, I want to try another one. I'm like, no, I'm not going to break my neck because of this. Like, we have it, and that's it.
And also that, to me, there is a fakeable, like, first of all, it looks great the way you guys did it, but there is a fakeable way of, like, you start to fall, the camera cuts away to everybody like wide-eyed, like, oh shit, come back, you're on the ground. A bunch of noise happens off camera, whatever. But what they did, having the stuntman come in, I mean, to whoever's idea that was, their credit, it really looked good.
I think Jackie Chan always talks about how when you do that cutting thing, it's not as effective as just one wide shot of someone who really knows how to do the thing, which Jackie Chan does.
Right. Yes.
That's why the YouTube videos work, because they catch a guy getting kicked in the balls or something like that.
Right. But also, but you're not making a Jackie Chan movie. You're making a comedy. It's like, no one's like, God, if Henry's not more active in this film, I'm going to walk out. Maybe that was why that guy left. He was like, there's no action.
Yeah, I never.
Your friend who walked out.
At this, yeah, but yeah. So I'm still making content. I've got. If you go to YouTube, you can watch The Highwayman and Henry's Kitchen, and then if you really like them, you can go to the Patreon and watch all the episodes.
And I would encourage that, just because, like, look, the Patreon's not that much money a month. Like, I don't know what people do with their money, but since I cut back drinking, I'm like, oh, look, it sort of stacks up a little bit. And not in a way that I'm like, and not in a way that I'm going to Hawaii every 2 weeks, but like in a way that's like, if I have $5, or two, and that's not even it. It's like $2, $3 a month. I mean, there are levels and tiers and whatever, and you can just pitch in and the content, it's worth it, man. If you look at there is a lot of quality programming. I'm not going to say there's not. Hulu, Amazon, Netflix, everyone's doing a really good job getting good stuff to the forefront. But for a couple bucks a month to get some Henry's Kitchens, and to get some Highwayman, and literally, it's the kind of thing that you share that with one person, and they're like an instant fan. There's no,
I always tell people, like, if it does not bother me one bit if somebody is just a $1. Like, as I've heard some people just be like, "Don't do $1, you freaking cheapskate," But it's like, not for me. Like, if the goal would be to be able to get 1,000 people doing $1. That's
of course, yeah.
But
but at the same time, if there's one person giving $1, and I know this doesn't help you financially, but that's. Again, this goes back to how many people are in the audience, how many asses are in the seats. It's like, who's laughing? Are the people that are here laughing? That's what matters. The people that are paying the money are enjoying the content, and like, that is the important part.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, no.
And I love it. There are people that don't know you're a comedian, that don't know you're trying to be funny with your Henry's. Like, some of the comments on the YouTube are, people are like, dude, this poor guy, like, does anyone, you're making a Valentine's meal for one. It's like, dude, that shit. And then people are like, wow, this music that you make is so sad.
Oh, yeah, no. Or there's people being mean, they're just like,
you suck.
It's like, this guy's putting egg in his vegan, not even vegan thing. It's like they think they're insulting me. It's hilarious.
It's always funny when people don't get it, when they're not in on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, thank you so much, man, for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
We'll do this again. I'll probably have you on 4 or 5 more times in the course of this podcast to talk about the rest of your shit, because it really, man, you're a very funny dude. You're very, underappreciated and underused in this town. Oh, Silicon Valley. Mike Judge was in your movie. He put you in the last couple seasons of Silicon Valley in, again, an understated character who you didn't say much, but it was very Highwayman-esque, and you don't have to say a lot. Like, I saw you, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
You turn, we see the ponytail, and then you like, your whole thing is I work with all these servers, like just computers, like you were just that guy, and it was perfect. I mean, we got a huge, I watched Silicon Valley with Nicole, but we got a huge kick out of that. That was just such a funny character.
Oh man, I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, that was
yeah,
super fun.
But anything you want to plug? Well, you just did. You plugged Highwayman. We plugged Henry's Kitchen.
Just go on YouTube and try to look at all this stuff. That helps me, and then
and you have a stand-up special on Amazon as well. That's very funny.
Yeah, neither here nor there. There's a full hour stand-up special if you want to watch that.
Yes, I highly recommend it. Yeah, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed Henry, and check out his stuff. I guarantee you will laugh if you don't have a tiny gray heart that only beats once a year. So thank you so much, guys. Thanks, Henry.
Thanks, man.